What is up, NFL fans, and welcome back to another episode of the NFL Whip Round. I'm Jeff Hartman, joined by Coach Kevin Smith, and it is crazy. We are already 3 weeks through the NFL season. Coach, how are you?
3 weeks in, Jeff. It goes fast, doesn't it?
It sure does.
It felt like we talked about the preseason forever, and now you're going to hit the quarter pole of the NFL season in a hurry. So things happen, and it's fluid. It changes. It's never boring.
Yeah, and that's what makes the NFL so great. It's not just that they only play once a week. It's that every single week you have no idea what's going to happen. There were outcomes in this past week slate of games where you're just like, how in the hell did that happen? And we're going to talk about all that here on the NFL Whip Round. In case it's your first time listening or watching, we do 5 topics in a player profile every single week. We're going to start off with a very objective question. Coach, I'll throw it to you first. Which team had the best win on Sunday? I'm curious where you go with this.
Well, I got a shout out to my friend Kevin Stefanski and the Cleveland Browns.
Knew you were going to go with them. I knew you were going to go with the Browns.
Jeff, is that now? Let's be objective. You have to put your Steeler lens aside and your reciprocal Cleveland dislike as a result. That might be that's the best win of the NFL season, isn't it? I mean, Cleveland beating a red hot Green Bay team that people were ready to anoint as the favorite in the NFC. And out of the blue with a stifling defensive effort. I mean, they were great. They hit Jordan 11 quarterback hits. They held Jordan Love like 183 passing yards. I mean, they were great on defense. Nobody saw that win coming.
To me, it was kind of poetic. And I'm not going to be honest. I was walking my dogs this morning and I was thinking about the questions and who had the best win. The Browns came to my mind first because not only did it give them their first win of the season, but they were a field goal kick away from beating the Bengals in week 1.
Yeah.
They technically, if they had a kicker who could actually make kicks, they should be 2-1. Instead, they're 1-2. I think Kevin Stefanski, if we talked about his job security before the season started, it seems to be okay right now, I'm sure. Joe Flacco's making enough plays to win. I don't know if it's the greatest win of the season so far, but I agree with you as the best win of this week, and it was dramatic. No one saw it coming, which is what makes the NFL so great. I don't know, Coach. I mean, what does it say about the Packers team? Like you said, they were riding high 2-0, their first road game of the year, though, going to Cleveland. What's your takeaway on Green Bay kind of falling flat?
Well, we said on last week's show, like, let's see Green Bay experience some adversity before we crown them because they'd gotten 2 games at home. The crowd was all fired up with Micah Parsons being there, et cetera. And obviously they didn't handle it well. One more note real quick about Cleveland. I think that their strategy this year is interesting. They had the number 2 pick in the draft, and everybody knew they needed a quarterback or an offensive playmaker. They didn't like anybody there. So they trade back to number 5, and they get a number 1 pick in next year's draft. And basically they're saying, like, we'll go in on the offense next year. But for this year, our best path forward is to double down on the defense. And they take Mason Graham with that number 5 pick, and they've built a really good defensive line, and they've got some good D-backs. And they're getting there. It's giving them a shot. They held Joe Burrow and the Bengals to 17. They hold Green Bay to 10 points. That if the defense can keep them in games, then they might cobble together enough offense to be respectable.
Kevin Stefanski is following the Mike Tomlin ways to win handbook. That's exactly what you just described.
Yeah.
Have a defense that's going to keep you in the game and then hope that your offense can make enough plays and have a kicker that can win you some games. Mike Tomlin's been doing this for over a decade this way. So it's not a bad philosophy. It's not one that's going to win you a Super Bowl most likely, but still in terms of keeping some job security for sure. I'll go in another direction here for a game that I thought was just wild. The ending was wild. We could have gone a bunch of different directions, but because of the magnitude of this NFC matchup, Eagles-Rams was fascinating. If the final score 33-26, people that might have just checked the box score didn't get the game. What a crazy back and forth game. You had a lot of scoring, and then the way it ends with the Rams, we'll talk about kicks later in the show. They get their field goal kick blocked. That would have been the game winner. And who was it? Who was it that returned it? It was the
Jalen Carter, 330 pounds of Jalen Carter.
He was moving, though, as he runs the block kick back for a touchdown. Coach, what were your thoughts on this game?
So Next Gen Stats, which it's amazing the stuff that we keep statistics on, said that Jalen Carter reached a top speed of 18.59 miles per hour, the fastest time ever recorded for a person over 300 pounds.
Holy smokes.
Running with the football, yeah. So he was motoring. But I think that, to me, that game speaks to how good Jalen Hurts really is. He's a guy people love to pile on with he's overrated. The Eagles are a system team. He's not as good as guys like Dak Prescott, blah, blah, blah. Because, he's an unconventional quarterback. But Philly's down 26-7 midway through the third quarter. And they got nothing going on. And Jalen Hurts put him on his back. I mean, he went through a stretch over that last quarter and a half where he threw for over 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. And he made all the throws. I mean, the Eagles have won 19 out of their last 20 games. And it's not always picturesque. And Jalen Hurts doesn't do it conventionally, but he's the kind of guy that if you're in that huddle, you believe he's going to find a way to win.
I got to see a decent amount of this game, just kind of in between the Steelers game. He took some shots in this game.
Yeah.
I mean, he got hit hard on more than one occasion. Hits that you normally don't see in the NFL when it comes to blitzing and sometimes just the pass rush. It was weird to see the Eagles' offensive line not being as stout as we're used to seeing them. But like you said, you can't say much about the performance by Jalen Hurts. He definitely did will the Eagles back, not just into it, but also to the victory. This was a big win for them, and the Rams have to leave Philly once again completely dejected like they did in the playoffs last season. I don't think this Ram team is going to go away, though. You agree?
Agree. I mean, they are legit contenders in the NFC. They've got all the pieces, the good defense. As long as Stafford stays healthy, they've got enough offense, and they got a great coach. So, I mean, they're in it for the long haul.
All right, let's go to our next topic. There are 6 undefeated teams in the National Football League. 2 of them, Buffalo Bills and Philadelphia Eagles, no surprise there. However, the other 4 teams, they definitely are. Of those teams, we have the Indianapolis Colts, we have the Los Angeles Chargers, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the San Francisco 49ers. Of those, who has impressed you the most?
Well, I think you have to look at that question from 2 perspectives. One, impressed as in been the most impressive, because to me, that's Tampa Bay. I think Tampa Bay looks excellent. They're another team that if you get to the playoffs in the NFC, you have Philly, you have the Rams, you have Green Bay, you got Tampa Bay. They're going to be right there. And I mean, I don't think anybody would want to play the Buccaneers in the playoffs if they're playing football the way they currently are. That said, impressed as in nobody saw this coming is obviously the Indianapolis Colts. You could make a case for those other 3 teams being 3-0, at least heading into the season. You could say, I could see how San Francisco or Tampa would be 3-0. You can't make that case for Indy. Nobody saw this coming.
San Francisco, I think, is the least of the undefeated group. They barely hung on to beat a really bad Arizona team. And honestly, I'm going to go with the Chargers. This Chargers team, I don't know what it is. They just look different. I don't know if it's second year with Harbaugh at the helm. They beat the Broncos 23-20 in week 3, but you look at their victories. They beat the Chiefs, remember, in Brazil in week 1. They beat another divisional opponent in week 2, and the Raiders 20-9. They're finding ways to win, and when you look at their schedule, they've got the Giants coming up. They have the Commanders. That'll be a good game. The Dolphins, then the Colts. I don't think this Chargers team is going away either. I'm very impressed with the Chargers in the way that they're winning games, even though they had some injuries of their own. Former Steeler Najee Harris looks like he ruptured his Achilles tendon, is probably done for the year. What's your take on the Chargers, Coach?
As long as I have been alive, basically, the perception of the Chargers, going all the way back to Dan Fouts in the 1980s, has been that they're a finesse team, that they want to throw the ball around. And, when they get up against the teams that want to punch you in the mouth, that they can't hold up. Well, that's not this Chargers team. This is built like a Jim Harbaugh team. They're good up front. They're tough. They run the ball. Marion Hampton looks like the real deal at running back. And they're not asking Justin Herbert to do everything. I mean, he made a throw in yesterday's game or Sunday's game that was outrageous, rolling to his left across his body to Keenan Allen in the end zone. He's still going to be able to do that stuff. But when you can complement that with a good rushing attack and a solid defense, then you've got something there. So I think this Charger team you said something feels different. I think it's the toughness.
And it's going to come down to, can Justin Herbert stay healthy? That has been the one thing that has derailed seasons before with the Chargers. Herbert is either dealing with injury or is knocked out of several games due to injury. he is getting hit, and they got to keep your eye on that. But if he can stay healthy, this team's going to be legitimate. And when you look at the AFC West, they're the cream of the crop right now. Even though Kansas City wins on Sunday night, so they get their first victory, the Raiders lose again, the Broncos lose again. They have a 2-game lead in that division. I hate to say it, but do you see anything changing there in the way? I mean, the standings will change dramatically. I don't think the Chiefs are just going to fizzle out. But do you think the Chargers, it's their division to have?
I mean, I won't write the Chiefs off, but that was a huge win against Denver, a division rival, because I think Denver's still a solid team. So opening up a 2-game lead with, I mean, I know they have another game to play against Denver, but for the moment, the tiebreaker in hand is a big deal. It'll come down to those 2 games, though, between, well, the next game, I should say, between Kansas City and the Chargers. If the Chargers win that one and sweep the Chiefs and now have that tiebreaker firmly in hand, I mean, they're going to be pretty tough to catch.
All right, let's go to our next topic. On the flip side of the undefeated teams are the teams that are winless after 3 weeks. That would include the Miami Dolphins, the New York Jets, the Houston Texans, Tennessee Titans, New York Giants, and the New Orleans Saints. Of those teams, are there any teams that are surprises that they haven't won a game yet?
Well, Houston jumps out. I mean, they've lost 3 games, and they've all been 1-score games, 3 close football games. They're just not generating enough offense. I mean, they're scoring around 17, 18 points per game. You're not going to win a lot of football games in the NFL when you can't score more points than that. That offense has really regressed since CJ Stroud's rookie year. The defense is good, man. They're keeping them in games. But Houston's got to find something offensively, find a spark, be able to make more explosive plays, and they're just not able to do that right now. I think the rest of that crop is fairly predictable. Both New York teams are bad. I mean, maybe the Dolphins are a little surprising. They put up a good fight on Thursday night at Buffalo, but they look like a football team in a large amount of disarray right now. So I know a lot of people are speculating that Mike McDaniel will be the first coach fired. That's always a fun watch. You know, the hot seat watch is always entertaining. So maybe they're a little surprising because 2 years ago, they were a team that was everybody's darling, and it went south quickly for McDaniel.
Let's go back to Houston for a second. After CJ Stroud's rookie season, Bobby Slowick, I think that's his first name. Slowick was like the hot coach. He was the next commodity, the Ben Johnson that was going to get head coaching looks. Year 2, he gets fired, but nothing changes. So they bring in a new coordinator, obviously, as a whole offseason. Year 3, it doesn't seem like much is changing. I guess from an outsider's perspective, that tells me that maybe it's not the coaching, maybe it's the actual execution and the players on the roster. What's your take on CJ Stroud and where he is trending at this stage of his career?
I think they're limited in terms of their explosive playmakers. They're having a hard time pushing the ball down the field, creating explosive plays. And when you do that and you have to consistently string together 9, 10, 12 play drives to score, there's just too much room for error there. You get a false start, a holding penalty, a tackle for a loss, and you're behind the chains. And one thing we know about the NFL is when you get behind the chains, defenses are relentless. So I think Houston has struggled in that area. I just don't know if they have the playmakers that they need to be more explosive on offense.
I've got to be honest, like out of those teams that, outside of Houston, which was the obvious choice, like you said, there's really not a lot of shocks in regards to the Jets or the Giants. The Saints, we knew were going to be bad. They don't have a quarterback. Spencer Rattler is not the guy. Neither is Tyler Shuck, who they drafted in the second round of last year's draft. But I want to go to Tennessee for a second. Cam Ward was the first overall draft pick in this past year's draft. What have you seen from him? And are they bordering that Bryce Young era where it's like, oh my gosh, they're putting him in too early? I mean, what have you seen so far from the Titans and Cam?
I've seen Cam Ward get hit a lot. That's what I've seen. He had 4 more sacks on Sunday. They're on pace this year to be in the neighborhood of 50-some sacks, which is, way, way too many. That's what happened with Caleb Williams in Chicago a season ago and led to the dismissal of everybody there. They got to protect him better. And we know, we talk about playmakers. I mean, Tennessee's really limited in terms of theirs. Their wide receivers, Ridley and Lockett, are probably on the downside of their careers, and they don't have a stud. Tony Pollard, the running back, he's okay, but he's not a star. They don't have anybody that they can really lean in on. So they have to lean on Ward. And he's probably not there yet and not surrounded by a strong enough cast to be productive. So it's going to be, it's going to be that year where you go, boy, if he just survives it and doesn't get ruined as a result of it, you got to chalk that up as a win.
All right, I'm going to ask you a little prediction here. Out of these 6 teams that have not won a game yet, if you had to pick from these 6, who has the number 1 overall pick in next year's draft?
Right now, I'd say the Saints. I think they're terrible. I mean, they got their doors blown off on Sunday.
It was over before it started.
Oh my goodness. It was a non-competitive NFL game, and you don't get many of those, you know. It was like one of those Georges playing Bethune-Cookman or something like that, you know, like it was all right, it wasn't that bad, but it was a mismatch, and you don't get too many mismatches in the NFL.
Oh my gosh. It's hard to, it might be between Tennessee and New Orleans. That's going to be interesting. We'll keep an eye on that. Let's go to our next topic. Russell Wilson, Danger Russ, as he calls himself. He was booed at home Sunday night as the Giants lost 22-9, and that was really culminating with this, the red zone trip, 2+ minutes left in the game. They're going for it, obviously, on 4th down. Every single pass was not even close. Like, he just threw it away. And so a lot of people were down on him, and the question now is, when does it become the Jackson Dart era? They did put Dart in this game. I think he rushed for like 3 yards, but it was only for like a play. Coach, what do you think about this? Is the Jackson Dart era ready?
Well, first, before we answer that, I don't think that Brian Daboll helped Russell Wilson because the play calling down the stretch was odd. I mean, they ran like 3 or 4 quarterback draws with Russell Wilson in the final 6-8 minutes of that game as they're trying to come back. I mean, that is not his game at this point. And then they put Jackson Dart in, and they got the crowd all excited, only for Jackson Dart to hand the ball off. They ran some read options, and Kansas City smartly just said, we're going to make him give the ball. We're not going to let him pull it and get on the edge and get the crowd all excited. So Dart comes in and hands the ball off a couple of times, and then they take him out and they put Wilson back in, and then they run a quarterback draw with Wilson. They wanted this, the thing that they wanted to see Dart run, they ran with Wilson, and then Russell Wilson just compounded the damage by having an absolutely atrocious final series where he threw a ball into the tunnel for intentional grounding, and then on 4th and goal, he literally hit the goalpost with a throw. So, I mean, like, that's not going to help. So, but again, you have to weigh you got to do a cost-benefit analysis here. Do you feel like you can support Jackson Dart enough to help him find some success? Because the last thing you want to do is send him out there and have similar frustrations.
Steeler fans know this Russell Wilson. He makes these plays. He still has the deep ball. He'll throw up the moon ball and he'll complete it. And you're thinking, okay, here we go.
Yeah.
But then he has these series, and it's just absolutely mind-numbing how difficult it is to watch him play the quarterback position, especially when he gets coned in. He can't see over the lineman because he's not tall enough, and balls just get thrown away. I'm going to say that Daboll has to go to Jackson Dart. He has to go to Jackson Dart yesterday. And the reason why is that his job is on the line. We have talked about this a bunch on this podcast and on other podcasts. If he wants to stay in New York and be the head coach of the New York Jets beyond this season, he has to prove that they made the right selection of going back into the first round and taking Jackson Dart. And he has to prove that he's got him moving in the right direction and that he's the guy to do it. And if you wait, even if it's till week 6 or 7, it might not be enough tape to prove that. So I think that I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Jackson Dart needs to be starting for the New York Giants starting in week 4. Do you agree or disagree?
I'm trending towards agreeing. Russell Wilson threw for 450 yards a week ago against Dallas. Let that be his swan song, right? because he can still author that performance every once in a while. We saw him do it last year in Pittsburgh against Cincinnati when he threw for over 400 yards. But the norm is more like what you got against Kansas City. So if you're Brian Daboll, if you're going down with the ship, you gotta at least try the guy, the rookie, who maybe can resurrect you. Maybe he's the lifeboat, because Russell Wilson isn't. You know what Russell Wilson is. You know that's not good enough. And so if your job's on the line, then you got to take a shot on the guy who he might not be good enough either, but he at least provides the hope that he is.
And like you said, it's one of those situations where, like, okay, they're 0-3. Well, what are we talking about? Is Russell Wilson going to resurrect the season? No. So you might as well see what you have in Jackson Dart for sure. All right, let's finish up, Coach, with the topics here. What do you make of all these block kicks on Sunday? I mean, this kicking situation has been an issue the entire year.
It was great theater. I loved it. Four block. I don't ever remember there being four blocked field goals in a single week. I mean, it feels like there aren't much more than that in a season, but they all happened late in games in these ultimate moments where these kicks were going to decide the outcome. Philly blocked two kicks from the Rams. We mentioned Jordan Davis running the one back for a touchdown. The one from, did you see the one from Will McDonald of the Jets leaping over the guard, blocking the kick and then scooping and scoring it? That was absolutely outrageous. And then the Browns get a big block kick from a defensive tackle in the final minute that gives them possession and sets up their own 55-yard game-winning field goal. For me, that's just determination. That's just where the guys on defense are 100% determined to block that kick, because you see it all the time. You know, you get a field goal and some of the guys in the middle of the line, they'll put their hands up. The dude will come hard off the edge. But it isn't like all 11 guys on defense are fully committed to trying to block that kick. They do go through the motions at times. But when the game's on the line and they realize, like, we got to have this play, it's fascinating to see what some of these guys can do. I mean, Jordan Davis steamrolled through three Rams blockers to block that kick and then scoop it up and run it back for a touchdown. So the individual efforts on all those plays were phenomenal.
It is, but it just goes to show you special teams does still matter. People will downplay special teams. I don't care whether you're talking about 60-plus yard kicks being made, whether you're talking about a punt being pinned deep, whether you're talking about a turnover. You saw it in Week 1, Steelers-Jets, where it was on a kickoff return, a fumble caused. That turned the entire tide of the game. You look at the week later in Seattle, against Seattle, Pittsburgh, Caleb Johnson letting the ball sail over his head. That was a turning point in the game. And so it's a situation, in my opinion, where people want to always poo-poo things like kickers. Kickers matter. If you haven't noticed in the National Football League, the whole process, the battery, if you want to call it, still a baseball term, long snapper, holder, kicker, it matters. And so I'm sure if you went back and really diagnosed some of this stuff, meaning was the snap low, was the hold good, did the kicker slip, all these different things, it matters. But like you said, the effort's got to be there, and every single one of these block kicks ends up being a turning point in the game. All right, let's finish this up with a player profile. Really sad. James Conner, running back for the Arizona Cardinals, left with what was labeled as a significant ankle injury. It's going to end his season. They don't even know, as of now, the severity of it. Video, it didn't. You couldn't see much, thank goodness. I think it was pretty gruesome. Coach, I'll let you go and talk about James Conner.
Yeah, I don't watch those injuries anymore. I've lost my appetite, my stomach for it. It makes me uncomfortable. It makes me sad. I think after 40 some years of playing and coaching football, I've seen enough on the field that, makes me just kind of want to not see this stuff anymore. But unfortunately, it goes with the territory. James Conner's a great story. Guy is a cancer survivor, and was a solid running back in Pittsburgh, but the Steelers decided to go another direction, let him go, and he wound up in Arizona. And he's rebuilt his career out there and has become a really solid feature back for the Cardinals. Excellent human being, does all sorts of charity work off the field, is great in the community, was beloved in Pittsburgh, and is received the same way out in Arizona. So, I mean, it's just a guy that's had some hard luck in both his personal life and professional life, and you just hate to see the injury. You hope that next year he can come back and still be productive.
Yeah, he's worked his tail off, and you got to remember he was the running back drafted. It's been 2017 with the Pittsburgh Steelers, maybe 2018, I can't remember, but he was the guy that filled in with Le'Veon Bell, decided he didn't want to play for the Steelers and held out, and he carved out his own niche in Pittsburgh. He couldn't stay healthy was the knock on him there. And he was doing well out in Arizona. It's tough to see injuries like this. And sometimes you just hope in terms of the severity of it that it's not a career-ending injury or one that's going to take him a really long time to recover from. And maybe you wonder, does he get another opportunity? I don't know. But James Conner, thoughts and prayers out to him for a quick and speedy recovery. So, Coach, why don't you let us know what's coming up on the call sheet this week?
Yeah, so we're going to a new format. We're Monday, Wednesday, Friday now rather than 5 days a week. Monday's our game balls segment. Wednesday, we do our whiteboard show with Coach Frank Lasasso, who's going to be my regular guest throughout the season. And then Friday's my show with Pez, which we do every week. But Tuesdays and Thursdays now, I'm going to be doing a ton of film breakdown work that's going to go on our Pro Football Insiders YouTube page and on my X account at KT Smith FFSN. And we're going to feature all sorts of stuff for Steelers fans. Tomorrow or today, Tuesday, we'll have a Derek Hartman film room. I'm going to get into Jalen Hurts' comeback in Philadelphia. I'm going to get into a little bit of Justin Herbert and what he was able to do on Sunday. So it's going to give me a great opportunity to, dive into the film from all around the league and post some breakdown stuff up there on our PFI YouTube.
And for those that don't know, Pro Football Insiders, you can go to profootballinsiders.com. That's our website. Check us out on YouTube. Go to YouTube, search Pro Football Insiders. You'll find us. You'll see the whip around there. You'll see a bunch of other content there, video content. Make sure you check it out. That does it, though, for another week. In the books, NFL whip around is done. Coach, thanks for your time. We'll talk next week. Take it easy.